I'm Hannah Kaplan, and this is the WCS Wild Audio Podcast, where you'll find reported audio stories covering the latest news and newsmakers from the Wildlife Conservation Society's Global Conservation Program, Zoos and Aquarium, and their many partners. We've got a great show today, so let's get to it. Peatlands don't get the attention they deserve. Worldwide, these wetlands provide crucial ecosystem services. They are vital for Indigenous livelihoods and as carbon storage powerhouses. Canada has some of the world's largest remaining intact peatlands. Now, WCS Canada has a new national strategy to safeguard them before it's too late. Dan Rosen has the story.
The Hudson Bay Lowlands is the second largest peatland complex in the world. It's located in Canada, mainly in the province of Ontario, an area of over 120,000 square miles. First Nations have lived on this land for centuries, keeping the environment healthy and abundant.
Right now it's pretty pristine, it's a roadless area, it's a healthy, living, breathing ecosystem that serves the global climate.
This is Victoria Goodday.
I am Victoria Goodday, and I'm a public policy specialist with Wildlife Conservation Society Canada.
In recent years, Victoria says, there's been a strong push to mine an area within the Hudson Bay Lowlands called the Ring of Fire for its mineral resources.
Things are moving very quickly on the industrial development side, so we feel there is the urgency to raise awareness of the cultural, ecological, spiritual, and climate value of peatland ecosystems.
Peatlands, like the Hudson Bay Lowlands, are a type of freshwater wetland. One of the things that makes them unique is peat soil, decaying plant matter that collects in these landscapes over thousands of years.
These ecosystems store a huge amount of carbon. Actually, peatlands worldwide store 30% of the Earth's soil carbon on only 3% of the Earth's land surface.
But once the carbon stored in peatlands is disturbed, it can't be put back in the ground. That's not all they do either.
So they're important for habitat, for biodiversity, they're important for water services, flood prevention, also wildfire prevention, really important for Indigenous livelihoods, particularly here in the north in Canada.
In fact, 1/4 of the world's peatlands are found in Canada, including the Hudson Bay Lowlands, but only a fraction of those are protected from things like natural resource extraction.
So there are increasing pressures on peatlands now, and even if they're within protected areas, some of those designations aren't, they're reversible, and so even those designations are at risk.
Countries like Germany, the UK, and Austria have peatland strategies in place to protect these important ecosystems.
Canada has not had any concerted action take place yet, and so we saw the need.
That's why WCS Canada recently released a national peatland strategy aimed at protecting these powerful and vulnerable ecosystems.
We did a lot of work to look at what exactly are the law and policy gaps. We spoke to peatland knowledge holders across the country to ask them what are some of the challenges to doing better, achieving better outcomes for peatlands, and we came up with this strategy.
The strategy is built around 3 core goals: to protect, restore, and to steward.
So protect particularly high priority peatlands, so peatlands identified through meaningful collaborative processes, ideally Indigenous-led processes, as being important to protect in perpetuity.
Restore refers to already degraded peatlands.
We want to stop relying on restoration as justification for disturbing peatlands. Right now, that's the norm in Canada, that industry proponents are usually granted approval to disturb a peatland as long as they undertake restoration activities, but we know that that's completely inadequate for compensating for the impacts. As soon as you disturb a peatland, irrecoverable carbon is released to the atmosphere, and it takes a long time to be restored to a peat-forming ecosystem.
Steward means putting in place appropriate support for Indigenous-led protection of these places.
A lot of Canada's large intact peatland complexes are in the Boreal region and in the north, the homelands of Indigenous peoples, and Indigenous peoples are already stewarding these ecosystems. We want to make sure they have the funding in place to compensate for those maybe outside extractive industry interests, and we need stronger models in place to support long-term stewardship of these lands.
One of the challenges, Victoria says, is making the economic case for keeping these places intact.
I mean, we spoke to many government staff and some elected officials, and government decision makers generally are wanting to do better and achieve better outcomes and protect peatlands. They're starting to understand the value of these ecosystems and the irreplaceability of these ecosystems, but they're looking for the tools, the arguments, the justification for leaving them intact.
Making that economic case, Victoria says, involves valuing the carbon that might be released, and also the services like wildfire prevention and water filtration that could be lost.
Just in the past year alone, we saw a bunch of legislative bills be passed at the federal level and the subnational level, for example, in BC and Ontario, looking to streamline regulatory processes, so to really move more quickly and approve major projects more quickly with less oversight, less rigorous environmental assessment in particular. And many of these projects are in peatland-rich areas.
That means there's an urgency to protect these places like the Ring of Fire before it's too late. For WCS Wild Audio, I'm Dan Rosen.
Today's episode was produced and reported by Dan Rosen, with help from Hannah Kaplan and Nat Moss. The WCS Wild Audio podcast is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts.